Picture this, the first few moments right after an attack. You've got sirens, total confusion, chaos. But for the first responders who are just arriving on that scene, there's a plan. There's a system that's designed to cut right through all that noise and save lives. So today, we're going to break down that system and take a look at how our emergency services prepare for and react to the absolute unthinkable. You know, this statement, it comes from emergency medical training materials, and it sets a really sobering tone. This isn't about scaring people. It's about a fundamental shift in mindset. This is the very reason why all the rigorous preparation and the protocols we're about to talk about are so absolutely critical for our emergency services. Okay, so if being prepared is the key, what exactly are we preparing for? Well, to really get a handle on the response, we first have to understand the threat itself, and that all starts with the official classifications.
So this is the core definition from the U.S. Department of Justice. And the key word to zero in on here is intended, right? This isn't just random violence. It's violence with a very specific goal, to create fear, to try and influence policy, or to just mess with a government's ability to function.
Now, this is where things get really interesting. The official difference between domestic and international terrorism, it's not about ideology, it's not about motivation, or even the groups involved. It literally all comes down to just one thing: location. And this might seem like a small detail, but it matters a ton because it's what determines which agencies get to take the lead on the investigation and the response. You know, when you're faced with a massive threat, the first thing you have to do is categorize it, right? Break it down. Well, responders use this handy mnemonic, be nice, to quickly classify the kinds of weapons they might be up against. It's a way of taking this terrifyingly huge concept of weapons of mass destruction and sorting it into these manageable, identifiable groups.
Okay, so they've got these categories in their heads, but how does that help when you're walking into a scene of just utter chaos? Well, it all starts not with action, but with recognition.
This is the huge question they have to answer, and they often have to do it in seconds. At first, an event might just look like a bad accident or maybe some kind of mass medical emergency. So what are the little clues, the subtle things that tell them they might be dealing with something way more sinister? Great, so the key is that responders are trained to see patterns that you or I might miss. Think about it. A single person collapsing, it could be a heart attack. But when 10 people in the same subway car all collapse with the same strange symptoms, that's a massive, flashing red light that a WMD might be involved. That pattern, that's often the most important clue they have. And this is where their training really kicks in. Look at this sequence. It is rigid and absolutely non-negotiable. And notice that 3 of the 4 steps are all about safety and organization before they even get to a patient. The mantra is crystal clear. You can't help anyone if you become a victim yourself. All right, so once the scene is controlled, the next phase is all about identification. This is where responders basically have to become detectives. They use patient symptoms and clues from the environment to figure out exactly what kind of weapon they're up against. This table really shows just how different these chemical agents can be. I mean, just look at the difference between sarin and VX. Sarin is a vapor, it disappears pretty quickly, but VX is this oily liquid that can just hang around for weeks, contaminating everything it touches. For responders, this completely changes the game. It affects the risk, the decontamination process, everything. To really wrap your head around the threat of something like VX, look at this number, 0.4 milligrams. What does that even mean, right? Well, the source material says it's about the size of the dot on a penny. That's it. An amount you can barely even see is enough to be fatal just by touching your skin. It's a really stark reminder of the invisible dangers at these scenes. And it's not just about nerve agents. Responders are also trained to spot things like vesicants, that's stuff like mustard gas, which cause these horrific burn-like blisters. And then you have pulmonary agents, like chlorine, that literally cause a person to drown from the inside out. Each one of these requires a completely different treatment plan. But you know, by far, the most common weapon used in these attacks is the explosive. And an explosion, it doesn't just cause one type of injury. No. It attacks the human body in multiple, devastating ways all at once. This slide breaks it down perfectly. A single blast creates 4 totally different ways to get injured. First, you've got the primary injury from the invisible shockwave itself. Second, secondary injuries from all the shrapnel and flying debris. Third, tertiary injuries from the sheer force of being thrown through the air. And fourth is basically everything else. What makes it so tough is that one patient can have life-threatening injuries from all four categories at the same time. And here's the crucial point, the thing that's so hard to grasp. Often, the deadliest part of an explosion is completely invisible. That primary blast wave, the pressure, can cause catastrophic damage to the lungs, tearing the delicate air sacs. They call it blast lung, and this devastating internal injury is the single most common killer in these events.
So this grim reality, the fact that explosions and active shooters are so prevalent, it's forced a major shift in thinking. It's expanded the role of the first responder beyond just the professionals and out into the general public.
Yeah, after several really tragic mass casualty events, experts got together and formed what's called the Hartford Consensus. And their big conclusion was pretty revolutionary because it challenged decades of old protocol. The old way of waiting for a scene to be completely safe before helping anyone, well, it was costing lives. So they came up with a new idea, a continuum of care that starts the second an attack happens with the people who are already there.
And that led to this acronym, THREAT, which lays out the new playbook. So, right after suppressing the threat, what's the very next step? Hemorrhage control. Stopping major bleeding became the absolute top medical priority, simply because it's the #1 most preventable cause of death in these situations.
And this is where it gets really smart. If hemorrhage control is the top priority, and the first person on the scene is almost always just a bystander, well, you do the math. The logical next step is to teach bystanders how to control a major bleed. And just like that, the Stop the Bleed campaign was born. And the impact? It's been staggering. Just look at that number. Over 1 million people trained by 2019, and so many more since. This is a huge shift in our whole approach to public safety. We're creating a nation of immediate responders who are empowered with the knowledge to save a life in those first few critical minutes before the pros can get there.
So when you put all these pieces together, from the definition of terrorism all the way to the tactics of immediate responders, a single powerful message starts to emerge. It's not about being afraid, it's about being prepared. This quote from the training manual itself just sums it up perfectly. The best defense against the fear these events are designed to create isn't panic, it's not ignorance, it's knowledge. It's about being aware of your surroundings, getting yourself prepared, and understanding that every single one of us can be part of the solution.
Ultimately, that line between citizen and first responder is getting really, really blurry. The person with the power to save a life isn't just the one in a uniform anymore. It's the person standing right there when it all goes down. So the final question this leaves us with is a personal one for all of us. Are you prepared to be one?